What is up, everybody? It's Rob here with Mcdojolife, and I have a very special guest on the show. His Stephan Kesting is on the show. What's going on, my friend?
Uh, I am working away, trying to take over the internet as usual.
Yeah, it sounds like me. I'll meet you in the middle, man.
Okay, you can have the left half, I'll take the right half, and we have like overlords.
That sounds fair enough, dude. That sounds fair enough. Now, before I get started, like my page, really before I get started, before I even get to the before I get started, I'd like to thank my sponsors, Ground Shark Coffee and Diamond MMA, because for one, they help keep the lights on, but two, I'm pretty sure they'd be pissed off at me if I didn't mention them at least once during the podcast. So thank you guys so much for the support. I appreciate what you do for me. But now to the before. I run a lot of different I guess, avenues in the martial arts. I try to communicate with every group of martial artists, no matter what their style or art is. So some of our guys might not necessarily be in the jiu-jitsu community, might not be as familiar with you. So I was hoping that maybe you can like tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do in the jiu-jitsu community.
I guess a lifelong martial artist is the right phrase to describe me. I started in classical kung fu. I wanted to start in ninjutsu. Strangely, my mom was against me, a little 8-year-old boy running around stabbing people while wearing black clothing and throwing stars and leaving spikes on the floor and smoke bombs. So I had to settle for I started with judo. Then I got started. So grappling was my first martial art. Then I went down the path of the classical Chinese martial arts. I was saved from that by uh, meeting people in sort of the greater Jeet Kune Do community, a much more open-minded community, somebody that actually, people generally believed in the value of sparring, how much they did, how efficacious that sparring was, what kind of parameters were around it. That varied from group to group, of course. I mean, if you call Jeet Kune Do and that whole family a martial art, of course, there are effective ways to train that and inefficient ways to train it, and I met both. But just the sort of the openness and to some degree the irreverence around martial arts, not bowing and scraping to the grand master poobah, was incredibly refreshing.
Mm.
Then I trained I have black belt in Kajikembo karate. I'm an instructor under Daniel Nasanto in the Filipino martial arts and the Indonesian martial arts. Trained many different systems. Did a whole bunch of combat submission wrestling, some MMA with Eric Paulson. I did a ton of MMA sparring with a bunch of high-level fighters. A lot of guys were my training partners back in the day. And I've just become more and more active in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, gi and no gi. And I love it. I think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art. It's also a sport. It's also a great fitness activity. It's also a great social thing, but fundamentally it's a martial art. So there has to be some applicability. And really, it's nothing new to you and your listeners, but I think the dividing line between fantasy and reality, like one of the big lines in the sand is the ability to spar it. By sparring, I don't necessarily mean you standing in front of me standing in front of you, and taking turns losing brain cells. If you punch me at full force in the face and then I knee you in the head and then you punch me. And yeah, that's part of it. But sparring really means trying to do something to someone at 100% or close to 100% who's trying to not let you do it to them and do it back to you. So if that's, land a kick to the body, if that's pass the guard, if that's choke somebody out, I'm trying to choke you out and you are trying to choke me, and you're trying to stop me, and you're trying to choke me out and I'm trying to stop you. And that's really where the rubber hits the road and functionalization of martial arts begins.
Yeah, I think that one thing that was really eye-opening to me as a martial artist was when I started karate when I was 12. I was very fortunate to have, like you said, like JKD is a very open-minded style, if I guess you could say. It's a very open-minded art. And guys like Dan Inosanto and Bruce Lee really helped pave the way for that open-mindedness in the martial arts, which is really refreshing, like you said, because a lot of arts are like, our art's the best art, that's it. Oh, you do Taekwondo? That's great because I would choke you. Or the Taekwondo guys are like, oh, you do Jiu-Jitsu? So you're rolling around with dudes. That's gay. Like, so it's really funny to like see those arts like always battling each other.
I'm old enough to have started in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when we still called North-South position 69. That seems to have been edited out of the martial art vocabulary now. Nobody refers to it as 69.
Nope.
I don't even. I've been cured.
I was fortunate enough to start when they called it north-south, so yeah. I'm happy for that. There's no videos of me around like back when I was like 15 going, yeah, man, me and this guy were 69ing, and it was, you know, he got me in a bad position. He choked the shit out of me.
Could be misunderstood.
Yeah, I think people might misunderstand that nowadays. They might not get it, you know. But you know, like when I went, what was that? I'm sorry.
We're culturally appropriating LGBTQ culture.
Well, luckily for me, I started off like with this kind of thing, saying that I was going to say whatever I felt like saying at any given moment, and if anybody didn't like it, they can just leave. Like I'm going to say what I want to say because that's the beauty of freedom of speech. So, but yeah, if they don't like it, then they can kiss my ass. But when it comes to like the martial arts,
because you don't have enough enemies already with the word.
Oh yes,
your life.
Good Lord. I think I get a death threat. It's calmed down. I think the bigger my page gets, the less death threats I get, which is unfortunate. I thought it was going to go the other way around, you know, thought I would have more material, but I think people started understanding that every time they came at me and like our personal messages, I was just screenshotting them. Like, I understand that I'm going to put this out to the world. Are you prepared for that? Like, you know? Oh, speaking of which, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy called the Persian Bodyguard.
I have not heard. I don't recognize the name. Maybe I would recognize the face or the image.
Yeah, so the Persian Bodyguard is a dude. That's his screen name on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure that if I say it correctly, it's Rostami Self Defense, and that family on their website. Not only does he claim that he had a coral belt in jiu-jitsu at 18 years old.
That's impressive.
Yes, I mean considering what is it, impressive. 50, 60 years to get a coral belt or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm amazed that he was able to go back in time and provide himself with a coral belt. So that was amazing. But the other thing is like he on his website, he claims that his grandfather started Sambo.
Oh.
But they're Persian, they're Iranian.
Mm-hmm. There's a long history. To be fair, there's a long history of wrestling in Iran. Maybe.
We might be able to give the benefit of the doubt there. I can always admit when I'm wrong. Like, but
extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. I just hope we got the proof to back it up.
I'd love to see the proof because all I can see is him slapping his students around for no reason. Like, so I did have this question for you, and I'm really curious what your thoughts are because you agree with me on one major thing, which is I think that sparring is a very integral part of learning. The martial arts anyway. I think that no matter what it is, you need to have your thoughts or your skill tested against another thought and or skill to prove that it works or it's not a theory, that this is actually legitimate.
I have the world's best front crawl. I've modified the front crawl to be the fastest swimmer in the world. Did you know that? I have a way of doing the front crawl that's so incredibly fast. I can't show it to you. And I've never taken it to the water. I mean, in other sports and other endeavors, it's self-evident. I mean, maybe the only, you know, if you swim, then you have to get in the water. If you say that you're a tennis player, you have to get out on the tennis court. Maybe the only areas that you don't have to do that in is if you're a self-help guru, and you can be totally screwed up in your own personal life. Maybe that's still okay, or that's certainly common practice. Or, if you're a businessman who's only ever made money telling everyone what a great businessman you are, as opposed to actually having done great business, or businessman who's actually lost money in the grand scheme.
Which happens a lot, you know. But, like, where's that line, though? Because obviously there's certain training that's just too dangerous. For instance, there's some rules of thumb that I don't do. I don't spar with my shoes on, and I don't train with people who do. Because it's dangerous. For instance, you can catch me with like a rock that happened to be in your shoe. It cuts me. Now my arm gets infected. Now I have staph. It's not worth it to me. Or, I don't typically like to train with full face headgear because what happens is people automatically assume because you have that they can hit you harder. Exactly. And it causes more concussions from what I've seen than ever saved. And I also don't train out on concrete. Like I've seen a lot of guys who will wear shoes, full face headgear, and train on concrete, full contact kickboxing. All I can think is that's the most dangerous form of training I could possibly think, because all it takes is somebody get accidentally knocked out, which accidents happen. Person falls, hits the back of their head on the concrete, and now they're dead because you thought that that was a macho, cool thing to do. But at the same time, you need your training to be realistic. So where do you think the line should be drawn? Oh, not before you get to the answer. The reason I brought that up was because the Persian bodyguard guy, some of his training practices are very much unrealistic to me. He's asking dude to put on a headgear while they have no gloves on, and he just slaps the hell out of dude as hard as he can while they're sitting there in like a seiza position, sitting up. He's just slapping the hell out of dude, waiting for his hands to drop, and as soon as his hands drop, he's slapping him again. And in my head, I'm going,
where the two guys are kneeling and the one guy. Okay, so I have seen him, and I think that was on thanks to your Twitter feed, I think is where I saw it. But I'm familiar.
Yeah, to me, that's unsafe training practices. You're just asking you to get a concussion or accidentally catch a fingertip across the eye, but where do you think the line is? Where do you draw the line between realistic and unsafe?
Sure. Well, let's, for the sake of argument, say that gouging someone's eyes out is a better self-defense technique in a life and death situation than punching them in the chest. Or, I think you can make an argument for that. But how are you going to train that? Right? I mean, if you and I decide, okay, Rob, we're going to train and we're going to go full eye gouging. Either you're going to win and gouge my eye out, or I'm going to win and gouge your eye out. And then we don't have a training partner anymore. So one of us wins, one of us gets the experience, but we lose a training partner. The other person loses an eye.
Yeah.
So clearly this is not, even though it's more realistic, even though it's more, effective, we can't go there. And that's exactly what you're getting at with sparring on concrete. Now, I think there is value as a grappler once in a while to go outside your comfort zone and, see what grappling is like, on a hard floor. It does change things. See what grappling is like with boots. I mean, shoes suck, boots suck worse. And, you find actually that if you're grappling for long enough on a hard floor, a big part of it is getting your shoes off as fast as you possibly can. Hopefully they're not lace-ups, right? If they're slip-on boots, you actually got a chance. Because
why is that? Why do you think that you need to get the shoes off? What does that affect?
Any dexterity in the feet, any ability to keep your foot on the hip. I mean, if your goal is to stand up and run away, you want to keep your shoes on. If your goal is to dominate on the ground, I would deny that I've wrestled at the fire hall. Hypothetically, if I had wrestled at the fire hall, the goal is not to get up and run away. The goal is not to get up and sucker kick the guy's face into next week with a Vanderlei Silva type punt augmented by steel toe and steel shank boots. The goal is to win on the ground. And the big ass boots, that are steel toe, steel shank, they get in the way. So you're going to be trying to ditch them so you can actually slip your feet into places, get your hooks in, even apply a triangle choke. It's guard works really, really hard if you're wearing big shoes. Now, if your goal is self-defense, yeah, you should train that, but you have to balance the safety against the efficacy. Where's the line? I think that was your question. I think you spend most of your time within the established norms, right? If kickboxing, to pick an art, has evolved to be done without shoes, often with shin pads, with boxing gloves, for a set of reasons, right? I mean, not too many kickboxers spar bare knuckle and with boots, even though. So there's a sort of cultural and historical reason why we do it fairly safely. If your interest is outside the sport, you should still spend most of your time in the sport and then do a little bit. And you can probably figure out most of the problems with kicking with shoes. Your feet are going to be slower. The impact will be harder. You'll be able to land different kinds of kicks. I mean, Savat kicks with the toes for a reason. If you're wearing steel toe boots or cowboy boots, you probably shouldn't be kicking. I mean, if you want to hurt the guy, you shouldn't be kicking with the instep of your foot. You should be using the point of the foot. It's there. It's a weapon. But you can probably learn that on pads rather than an opponent. You can probably get most of the benefit training that safer. What's the line? I don't know. Ultimately, if you're trying something brand new, it's like making toast, right? do it till it burns, and then 1 minute less. So ramp up your training until somebody gets hurt, and then dial it back down, or just trust, trust the systems have been put in place. So long as there's some kind of contested sparring, you're probably all right. I think it was John Danaher who made the point about Jigoro Kano. I'm not sure if he was the first guy to make the point that to make judo effective, they actually made it less deadly. They took out a whole bunch of the, the neck breaking and the grab the top knot and, try and twist the neck, or the eye gouging, or the groin punching, or the, nose biting, or the groin biting, and all the stuff in classical Japanese jiu-jitsu. They took that out, and they were left with the stuff that they could train safer against full resistance. So if you had to choose, I would bet every time on the guy who's trained full resistance in a fairly safe manner, especially if then you spend 5% of your time, 10% of your time training the too deadly for the street techniques on top of that. If you're mounted on me, it's easy to eye gouge me. If I'm mounted on you, there's no way you're going to eye gouge your way out of that situation. So
yeah, you're just going to get rained down on.
Spend 90% of your time working on, getting to mount, getting out of mount, and then 5% of your time working on eye gouging. I would also deny that I practiced eye gouging on bovine eyeballs from biology labs. When
what's funny is you're directly under Dan Inosanto, so you're an instructor under Dan Inosanto, which is a very prestigious thing to be, in my opinion. I don't think that there's, I think that Dan Inosanto is probably one of the pioneers of open-minded martial arts. I think that obviously he still trains today, which is incredible to me at his age. He was the one of the few people who was experimenting on learning what was effective and what wasn't in the street. Like, for instance, the whole the knife versus gun scenario. What was it, the 20-foot rule, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, 20 or 22 feet. I was in the name. Trying to remember the name of that video. Now, it was an instructional video
that he did. Yeah,
he was a guest star. It was essentially a police training video, and it was really interesting. They showed that if I have a knife and you have a gun, and your gun is holstered, and I'm 3 feet away from you, this whole I would just shoot him, I just plink him, I just put some holes, I ventilate them real good. Well, at a range of 3 feet, if I have a knife and your gun is holstered, you're dead.
Yeah, that's what you've been proven over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it's, I think, at a range of something like 12 to 15 feet, if I come running towards you, you probably be able to draw and you probably get one shot off, but I still stab you.
Which would suck. Like, hey, I got him. Ow, shit, I'm dead.
Yeah, it's only a range, I want to say 21, 22 feet, where if I come running with a knife, that you get 2 shots off center of mass and probably take me out. But people survive gunshot wounds too. I mean,
yeah, that's true. Depending on where you get shot, you might be all right. And
a gun isn't a great self-defense tool. I don't carry one right now. I mean, if I lived in South Africa, I might.
Or Florida. If you lived here in Florida, you'd probably carry.
Well, there's certainly cultural areas. I mean, I spent a whole bunch of time in Arkansas, and it was unusual to be in a car that had less than 2 firearms. And then they had a knife and a pepper spray. And I don't know why you would ever pull your pepper spray out. Maybe
that's an important combination. If you had to shoot the guy, then stab him 15 times, and then mace him, you need that. You need to have those extras because the scenario calls for it.
Right. And nothing's more effective than mace into an open knife wound because it really burns. It really irritates. Yeah.
That'll teach him for jaywalking. But the reason I brought that up was because Dan Inosanto had a saying about short, mid, and long-term training as martial artists. And the short-term guys are usually the pro fighter type guys, the guys who are going 100% with their training, the most realistic, the hardest core training that you could do. But the problem is that it destroys your body. Sure. And then, on top of that, he talked about the long-term guys, which was guys who were, like Dan Inosanto himself is a long-term martial artist who understands that, you'll never see a video of Dan Inosanto, like from what I've seen anyway, I could be wrong, going like full contact kickboxing with anybody. I've never seen this, but that's because he understands that in order for him to train for a very long period of time, that he needs to take care of himself, take care of his body, and continue his training.
I've not been in Thailand, but I have trained Thai boxing, and it's pretty common there supposedly, from all accounts, that you beat the crap out of the Thai pads, but you don't
Yeah.
spar real hard, right? I mean, again, it's safe. Like elbows are a very effective tool. Knees are a very effective tool. But if we spar hard with elbows and knees, you're going to be cut, and I'm going to have a ruptured liver or ruptured spleen. And again, we won't be able to train very often, and especially if our lifestyle requires us fighting. Oh, I got a bout next week, and I got a bout 2 weeks from now, and I got a bout 3 weeks from now. We can't be destroying ourselves in training. So now most people in North America, they're not competing on a weekly basis, thank God, right? They're not in, although there are jiu-jitsu guys who compete every weekend. I'm sure there are point karate guys who compete every weekend. Aren't that many full contact guys competing every weekend since Shannon the Cannon in the early days of MMA.
Yeah, dude. Like when I did sport karate, we competed literally every weekend. So, which is why I got burned out from doing it. I was like tired of sitting inside a hotel room, tired of getting the shit beat out of me by international competitors.
I'm sure those young Thai boxers also get tired of it, but it pays they also like eating, right? Fortunately, your ability to have a breakfast and a lunch and a dinner wasn't contingent upon your performance at the sport karate tournament. I'm assuming, unless you have weird parents.
No. It's funny because when I started, my parents were like, I'm not downing my parents. They were very supportive after I got started and stuff. But there was a period of time when I was like, I want to do martial arts for a living. And they were like, you need a real job. Yeah. And I was like, but there are people doing it for a living. It's a job. It's a real job. They're getting paid money. And they were like, you're not going to make any real good money doing martial arts. And then as I started going through and learning so much more about the martial arts, it wasn't that you can't make money. It's that most of the people who are in martial arts to do it for a living are either one or two things: really good martial artists, terrible businessmen, or really good businessmen, terrible martial artists. And like that realization over the years of doing it made me realize it's like, well, why can't they just meet? Like you can't learn both. Like, I don't understand. Like, have you encountered like financial issues like throughout the martial arts or anything like that in a similar way? Or is this a full-time career for you or a part-time thing?
I have essentially two full-time careers. I am a firefighter. I love that. It's a lot of fun. It's it caters to my ADHD. Right? Yeah. No 2 days are the same, and no two calls are exactly the same. So I really enjoy that, and it's the martial arts in a weird way that led me to the firefighting, because what do I enjoy so much about the martial arts? And actually, one of the things that really I enjoy is the ability to go train something, whether that's a jab, cross, side kick combination, or a setup to get your grips from butterfly guard. It doesn't matter. To train something and then to go do it, for real. Do it for real in sparring. Do it for real in competition. That carryover from training to do something to doing it for real, to actually using it, was very, very central, and it's something I really enjoyed. So I was going, okay, what other careers has this kind of training and then using it thing, and is physical and is mental and has, is exciting, so emotional, I would say. And firefighting was a thing that I came up with after much brainstorming, because it does require the mind, it does require the body, it is exciting, and it does require emotional control. You do go train something. Okay, today we're going to train, I don't know, how to apply foam to a flammable liquids fire. And then you might well have, the next day to apply foam and water to a flammable liquids fire. So that transition from training something to applying it is really sexy. And at the same time explains why I found such major problems with traditional martial arts like Kung Fu, because you're practicing, monkey steals the peaches, and you're told maybe after 4 years of practicing monkey steals the peaches that you're actually ripping, reaching in there, grabbing someone's groin and then ripping off their testicles. Okay, sure. And I've trained this maybe 1,000 times by doing that form 1,000 times, but it's never going to be applied. Like, I've been doing martial arts a long time. So far, I have
never had to steal a peach. Huh?
I've never had to steal a peach. I've never had to tear anyone's testicles off. I mean, I live in hope. The day is you're on the West Coast. It's not even 10 o'clock. I could be attacked, and I might be able to start my scrotum and testicle collection.
You know, that's one big issue I've had with certain arts that apply a lot of striking to the groin. For instance, Krav Maga has a really high level of number of techniques that end with you striking the groin. You know, like monkey steals the peach from traditional kung fu. There's a lot of that ox hand to the groin, up and palm heel to the groin, that kind of stuff. But the problem that I've encountered when I was bouncing was baggy pants. And when you try to kick somebody in the groin who has baggy pants on, you catch a whole lot of fabric and you catch no balls. And you try. Oh, you try. And you give it the old Rochambeau up the pipe. But guess what you miss? You miss the testicles. And another thing that I've realized through training is sometimes you get hit in the groin hard. And you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. But you need medical attention. And then sometimes you get hit and barely get touched and you feel like your whole world is going to collapse. 100%. And that has a lot to do with like your adrenaline, your body type.
And there's a delayed effect as well, where you get hit and you go, that's not too bad. And you keep going like 3 or 4 seconds later, or the time that it takes to stab somebody.
Yeah, like a liver shot. Getting hit in the liver is very similar. You get hit in the liver, you're moving around with somebody, bam, you're like, oh, that sucked. And you're moving around again. All of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I think I'm going to take a knee. Oh, God. You know? Like I got hit in Miami one time, was spinning back kick, one of my first losses in kickboxing. And I got hit so hard, it looked like I was a door opening because my lead foot planted, but my rear foot swung back. And I got hit hard. And I was like, oh, well, if that was the hardest I'm going to get hit today, then and I took it, I'll be fine. And I took 2 steps forward to like engage and I just collapsed. I thought he broke my ribs. That pain was so intense. You know, it's just crazy what your body will do.
Nobody's saying go kick somebody in the nuts if you're in a fight. Like, for sure, it's a legitimate target. But at the same time, but karate has this karate and kung fu and many of these, you know, self-defense systems have got this mythology of the one-punch kill, right? And having been there in sparring, and you've probably been there too, where you come out and you're squared up against the guy and you land your Sunday punch, you know, your best punch, and the guy doesn't react at all. That's totally demoralizing, right? You're like, oh my God.
And you hit him, like, especially like you know, it brings up another interesting thing, man. I love these conversations, by the way. We can just go down this rabbit hole all day. You know, it brings up an interesting point. I was just training in Gracie Baja, North Orlando.
Okay.
And they have a Muay Thai coach there who's been doing it for a very long time. I think over 23 years. He very level-headed dude, and he had a huge class. It was great. I went in there. They were so hospitable, which is not what I usually get, by the way. Most people think I'm either there calling them out or they try to rip my head off to see what I'm made of for some reason. Like, I'm mediocre, dude. You don't have to hurt me. But then when I went in there and I kickboxed with him or whatever, you know, we had a conversation. And during our conversation, I talked to him about what does he do with guys who come in too rowdy, who hit too hard, who try to hurt other guys. And I know my experiences up to this point in my life. I always was a 3 warning guy. I was a 3 warning guy. So your first warning was a verbal warning. Hey, man, it's a little hard. Let's tone it down a little bit so that way nobody gets hurt. We're just nice, light contact sparring. It's not full contact. Nobody needs to get knocked out. Then the second time is another warning. But then I move them to a different partner, a more advanced partner. And I say, hey, you know, let's go ahead and work with somebody who's a little more advanced, you know, who might be able to keep up with a little bit better speed that you're looking for. But still, let's tone it down and let's make sure that nobody gets hurt. And then, of course, my final warning, which is a dickhead move of me, which I just realized literally last night when I was in Orlando, was the final warning would be like, hey, you know, let's just go ahead and spar together. And then, of course, I would just drop them. And then that would be that. And then, you know, I'd usually never see him again. And then I talked to this guy, the Muay Thai coach over there, and I asked him what he does to deal with that issue. And he goes, oh, like as soon as they do it, I give them a warning. And then I let them work with a senior student, which was very similar. He goes, when I have them work with a senior student, I tell the senior student to tell them to tone it down instead of me. So it's not like I'm getting on to them. And then he said, if the senior student comes to me and says, hey, man, this guy's going real hard, too rowdy, I know the senior student can handle it, but then he'll take the guy, he'll pull them off to the side, and he'll relieve them from class, and he'll write them off their contract. They don't have to worry about it ever again. He just sends them home. What do you usually like? I'm sure that you've been in the studio multiple times over the years and seen things like this. How has it been handled for you in the past?
I used to think that it was unfixable. Like, certainly I used to think that some people were just dickheads and they could never be cured. And this is actually quite a long time ago. I was training. I think I was a blue belt or a purple belt. And there was a guy who'd come in who had done some sort of catch wrestling or something. And he would just maul beginners, right? He specialized in torturing white belts and just beating the crap out of them.
Now, was he a lifelong student, or was he somebody who was fairly new?
This is a long time ago, so jiu-jitsu hadn't been around for that long. But he'd kind of been involved in the scene, and everyone was like, oh, no, here comes Todd. And this is the instructor's issue, and I wasn't the instructor, right? Like, it's different if I'm teaching, because I'm pretty safety conscious, and, you know, having had lots of unnecessary injuries, I want to really prevent other people from having unnecessary injuries, because injuries are the devil. Really, injuries are what's going to stop you from getting better in the long run. I mean, you can compensate for lack of talent by doing more training, but you can't do that more training if some dickhead has popped your ACL. Yeah. Well, hey, Dominic, thank you so much. I'm a big fan of you too. So there was this guy, he kept on cranking everybody who was smaller than him, who was weaker than him, was less experienced than him. And I kept on waiting for the instructor to do something, and he never did. Finally, one of the senior students who had actually been an Olympic level wrestler and also an Olympic level, or not Olympic level, a world-class rugby player, just one of the toughest human beings I know, went over there and for the next half hour beat the living crap out of him. Basically not tapping him, but just, you know, crunching him, smushing him, headlocking him, grinding on him, not in any formal submission, because that would have been tap, 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 we're done.
But that top pressure, man, sometimes you want to tap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it was horrible to watch. It was torture. And the guy left, never came back. Didn't come back next class. Came back 2 months later, and everyone's like, oh, God, here he is again. And he went and worked with a beginner, and he was the nicest guy. Like, he had been taught his lesson, and I've seen him work with other beginners since, and we're kind of in the same, we're still in the same city, we're kind of in the same sport, and he's become a lovely human being. So actually, that's an example, concrete example of how a massive beatdown improved somebody's attitude for forever. Now, to be fair, so much depends on the environment that you come from, right? If this is normal behavior at your home club or your first training environment, then this, you know, it becomes, this is, oh, of course you do this, right? We're tough. Which is why I get asked, and you must get asked a lot, you know, hey, there's a ton of bad clubs out there. Where do I train? How do I find a good club? My advice is always the same. You're looking at potentially investing months or years or maybe even decades of your life in an art, right? It's going to be a long haul. At the very least, you're going to pay money, you're going to sweat, probably going to bleed, and you're going to curse, right? It's going to be difficult, it's going to be rewarding. So why would you just go to one place and check it out and try, you know, one hour beginner class or whatever that they have, and then sign up? Go to every school that's within your catchment or that you're within the catchment of. Train, you know, take the free class at the Gracie Baja, take the free class at the Autos place, take the free class at the Independent place, take the free class at the Draculino affiliate. Go and train everywhere. Do a free class. If they say, no, you can't do a free class, then you know you don't want to train there. Make notes, because you will forget. Decide where you want to train based on that. Become educated. By the third class you go to, you'll know what questions to ask. Do you guys charge for belt promotions? Do I have to wear your proprietary gi? Do you have to bow when you get on and off the mat? Maybe one of those is a deal breaker for you, right? Maybe it's not. You know, really, it's $500 a month. Really, I have to sign over my firstborn.
Urine and semen sample, please.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just put your 23andMe genetic profile. You come into the school. Trust me, we'll take good care of your DNA.
You know, that's been something I've been doing a lot lately, is consulting work for martial arts studios, because really a lot of martial arts studios, they just don't understand how to make money, legitimately make money. They go to shitty sales tactics and stuff like that. They try to go to high pressure sales, which I fucking hate. They do a lot of things that are really shady to make their businesses better.
Normally, Rob, it's a $5,000 sign up fee. But if you sign up today, we'll waive that $5,000.
I see you played this game before, sir.
I've never used that tactic. I don't actually go to school, so I'm immune from having to do that.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because talking to them and seeing what they have in place and stuff like that, and them not understanding that it's okay to be 100% transparent. It's okay to do that. Like, people will pay for what they want. Do you do katas? Okay, cool. Some people want that. That's okay. Do you do karate? Well, I think we should change the name to and MMA. Have you ever done MMA? Well, no. Then don't do that. Own what you have. Are you a kung fu dude? Be a kung fu dude. That people need that. Somebody's looking for that. Be that. But I just never understood why people be so shady as to be something that they're not. It just doesn't make a lot of sense business wise, because eventually your customers are going to find out. They're going to find out.
We have this movement here, and that's clearly a wrist lock, and a wrist lock is a joint lock, and a joint lock comes from grappling. Therefore, we do karate and grappling.
Grappling is another cute word. When I was learning karate, nobody was a jiu-jitsu instructor or judo instructor or sambo. Nobody did any grappling arts, not even high school wrestling, right? So they had a grappling club. So they could get away with calling it grappling because grappling is just an in general term, right? It's kind of like saying, this is my martial arts academy. What martial art? Oh, martial arts. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
that always just killed me. But one thing,
because you're in luck, because we're teaching it.
Well, that's another sales tactic. Hey, what brought you in today? Well, I was looking to lose weight. A lot of our members signed up just for that exact same reason. Oh, I was looking because I was looking to gain weight. You know what? A lot of our members signed up for that exact same reason. Like, I just heard you say the other guy that they signed up because they wanted to lose weight. But one thing I do think is a good thing. I do actually like uniformity for a martial arts studio. I think that comes in really handy in terms of one thing, and it kind of takes away from another. But particularly like uniforms, right? I think
I'm not saying that that's necessarily a deal breaker, but it might be a deal breaker for some people. Man, I just spent $4,000 getting the latest, I don't know, sprawl gi, your custom, and I can't wear it at your club. You'll know what you will have a set of deal breakers, and I'll have a set of deal breakers. I hate bald guys. You hate guys with glasses, right?
But just to kind of add to that, because I think a lot of people feel like that's a big negative thing, and I just wanted to throw my opinion out as to why I think it's a good thing. For instance, if you look at any professional team at all, baseball, football, soccer, hockey, one thing that's universal is they're all wearing the same uniform because they're representing a brand at that point, and they put time and effort into the brand. What always killed me was when I saw people at studios that I would train at complain about the tuition price, but go buy a show-your-roll gi instead of buying their studio's gi, which will put money back into the studio, which will put money back into their personal training. I never understood that mentality because it just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense in people's mind. They want what they want when they want it, but they don't understand that a lot of these martial arts academies aren't financially making billions of dollars. Just because everybody's wearing the same gi doesn't mean that they're making a lot of money off of it. Wholesale for karate uniforms from Century, just an in general gi, right? A wholesale Century plain gi costs $8. Typically turned around and sold for roughly around $30, $40, depending on your academy, right? Or if you're a really, really big academy and you do that old game where you charge $120 for your $8 gi, you're a piece of crap. But in any case, like most gyms don't make a lot of money. So pro shop sales is another huge thing that they do. But with jiu-jitsu, there is no pro shop. It's a gi and a rash guard and shorts, and that is your pro shop. That's all you need for jiu-jitsu, right? So when somebody goes, what was it?
Ringworm cream.
Yes.
I have been gouged, I think I bought a $30 tube of ringworm cream. I showed up at a class. It's like, oh crap, I have ringworm, and I'm leaving. Right? I'm doing the right thing. Oh, why are you leaving? I just realized I have ringworm. Let me just go off to the pharmacy to get ringworm. Oh, don't worry, I have the best ringworm cream in Brazil here. Oh, okay. Well, it saves me the trip. I mean, I'm still not going to train, but it saves me the trip to the pharmacy. Okay, so I start putting it on. How much is it? $30. Like, oh, really? $30
Nice.
ringworm cream. So,
but
pro shops can have more. Yes,
yeah,
rash guard belt and.
Yeah, like like a karate school or a taekwondo school or more traditional martial arts. You got your bow staffs, you got your knives, you got your sticks. It's like a wall.
Have 4 of each.
Yeah. Oh, you don't like that color? We have purple, we have pink, we have blue. Like Jesus, But I was always a fan of like the uniformity with just that one thing because it just always brought a little bit more pride to your school. Like this is my team I'm representing, and wherever I go, if I'm wearing whether it be a Gracie Baja or whether it be an Atos Academy or whether it be even an ATA or whatever, right? When you go out and about to the world, you're representing your team as well if you're wearing their clothes. So I feel like it kind of makes people kind of keep themselves in check a little bit more in terms of how they act to other people when they're representing their academies, if they actually gave a shit about their academy, But that's just my opinion,
Yeah, I have mixed opinions. I can sit on either side of that fence. I don't have a big horse in this race. I mean, the iconoclast, or not the iconoclast, the oppositionalist. There's a word I'm looking for. The individualist in me says, "Screw you! I want to wear whatever I want to wear," and I think that's probably still me reacting to the uniformity of technique, uniformity of uniform, uniformity of thought, uniformity of behavior in the really traditional martial arts world, right? I really took so much glee when I discovered non-traditional martial arts. Oh, you can just wear a t-shirt and pants? Oh, I want to train today in army boots and jeans? Like, you try and do a kickboxing class in army boots and jeans. I have. It sucks. But it's useful, right? You know something at the end of the day, which I didn't spar wearing that, but I certainly lots of shadow boxing, lots of air kicking, lots of combinations, lots of bag, lots of focus mitts and kicking shields. It's an interesting experience. So that would have only been possible. That was only possible because there was no uniformity of uniform.
Yeah.
So I'm on both sides of that. I mean, I understand the gyms do it. I think sometimes the markups are absolutely
that I don't. Yeah, that I hate. I don't like it when
some markup. I mean, how many times have you heard this story? Yeah, so I wanted to get my dojo gi, my specialty branded gi. So I was talking with somebody in Pakistan, and then I sent them a money order for $5,000 for, I don't know, whatever, 30 gis, and then it never arrived. I know quite a few people have been scammed by.
Yeah, that's a huge scam.
So just because you're buying a gi that the guy got for $20 and he's charging you 80. Well, are you taking into account the fact that he had to pony up the $5,000 in a money order to send off? Maybe he's going to get it. Maybe he's been scammed before. So, I mean, obviously there needs to be profit in this stuff too, because it is expensive to rent space. It is expensive to do advertising.
And I think a lot of people label studios McDojos if they are financially successful before they even walk in the door sometimes, or right when they walk in the door, they look around and the place is clean and everybody's wearing the same uniform and they go, nope, not for me. Or if they walk into a dojo and it's like dirty as shit, it's like, this is authentic because there's shoes everywhere and I definitely am going to get staph infection here. I can't wait to train on these dirty ass mats. It smells like someone peed on a used baby diaper full of Indian food. This is what I was looking for. Like that kind of stuff to me, like it turns me off because I walk into the studio and all I know is my training will be cut short because this studio will not financially succeed. I know that I'll fall in love with the instructors. I know this will be a great training experience. I know it's going to be great. I'm going to learn a lot. And then all of a sudden I look up and I just realize this building's closing in about 6 months. Right. It's like, because they didn't take the time to understand that why would you get into a business unless you wanted to make money? Why not just do it as a hobby? Why not do it for free? If you don't want to make money, right? But if you're going to do this and it's going to be your career, right? And you're going to be financially successful with this, you should probably figure out a way to make money,
Just like not everybody can be a fighter. I mean, honestly, you can take 100 people They can all train as hard as they can. Not all of them are going to be successful fighters. They can all be successful martial artists, I think. They're not necessarily going to become black belts. They're not all necessarily going to, become champions in whatever, arena or circuit you're looking at. Certainly in MMA, not all of them are going to make it into the UFC. Not all of them are going to become champions. It's just impossible. They just don't have the talent, the injury resilience, or the luck to not get injured.
Yeah. That brings up another interesting thing that I've always, always like to get opinions of different martial artists is the time it takes to get a black belt, because there is no standard across every art. No. There's typically like standards within each individual art, like averages, like the IBJJF has their certain standards or whatever. But, I always think it's funny when people base success off the belt alone, because people will laugh at ATA, for instance, me, for giving out black belts in 2 years for karate. And they'll give out black belts to children who are 8, right? But then if the standard is it should not just take 2 years to get a black belt, right? But then we turn and we look at BJ Penn. And BJ Penn gets his black belt in roughly about 2.5 years or so.
3.5, but it could be wrong.
Yeah,
short time. Yeah.
So is the standard time or skill? Well, if the standard's time, then BJ Penn shouldn't have gotten that. He should have waited his allowed time, right? Or if the standard's skill, well, now BJ Penn is able to get that black belt, right? But what about the guy? I follow this guy on Instagram. His handle is Wheelchair Jiu-Jitsu, and he can't move from the waist down. And he trains at Henzo's facility. Now, this dude puts his heart and soul into the art. He goes to the IBJJFs, even though he can't walk. He competes against guys who have full mobility. He doesn't downplay what he has. He goes after it hard. Now, he's a brown belt maybe now, or a high-level purple belt. But is that guy ever going to have a guard?
Yeah.
No, he's not. He has to adapt what he has to modify what's going on, because he can't move his legs. So the standards are so warped that there can't really be a standard. So the standard I was taught was really it would happen after I got my first stripe on my purple belt. I looked at my instructor and he saw that I was kind of upset. I wasn't happy like most people were. And he looked at me and he goes, "Hey, let me talk to you." And I go, "Hey, what's up?" He goes, "Why are you so upset?" He was like, "You should be excited. You just got promoted." He goes, "These things take a long time to get. You earned this." And I go, "Well, I don't feel like I earned it." He goes, "Well, that's not up to you." He goes, "But the second thing is," he goes, "could you kick your own ass?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I want you to take yourself now, and I want you to go back in time to the first time you walked through these doors.
Right.
Could you beat that dude up? Could you beat him? Are you better than he was?" And I go, "Well, yeah." He goes, "Then you earned it." And he walked away. And I was like, well, that changed my standard. Yeah, that changed my standard as to what a belt is. It has nothing to do with everybody else in the goddamn gym or everybody else in the world. It has to do with, are you better than you were the day before, the week before, the month, or the year before? And it makes it very difficult to have standards in terms of art, So I wanted to know what your opinion was on belt promotions and ranks and standards.
Man, this is a tricky area. I agree that there's no easy answer, because you do have the BJ Penn, ridiculously talented, right? And there's that crazy footage of him sitting there in the gym watching some people spar, and then up comes his foot and he scratches his own ear with his own foot while he's sitting there with his arms crossed. It's I give up. I I hate jiu-jitsu. I can't do that.
He jumped out of a pool too.
Sorry?
He jumped out of a pool one time too.
Right. So you combine insane explosiveness with insane flexibility. And I believe one of the reasons he got promoted so fast is because he was going to class. He was essentially, I believe, funded by his father. No, you just train. So you can take a private with Sharuto, you can take a private with this guy, you can take a private with that guy, you can train twice a day, the whole rest of the time you can recover. And I think all of us would agree that if you could sleep 10 hours a day, take a 2-hour nap. I don't know if that's what he was doing, but that's probably what I would need to do if I was training twice a day and then taking a private on top of it. And then, because I'm older, because I'm close to 50, I'd have to also then be running. Well, I got my morning physiotherapy appointment, my afternoon massage therapy, cryotherapy, just therapy, right? Just to try and keep everything together. Then I got to go get custom fitted for orthotics and for joint supports for every joint in my body.
Got to get the fish oil in.
Yeah, exactly. My fish oil IV injection. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that. Like, yeah, I think we all acknowledge that if you're super talented, you're going to get it faster. You're going to get whatever rank faster. If you're not talented, if you are, hindered by lack of athleticism or lack of a lower body, it's probably going to take longer. We have to acknowledge that there are sort of competitive black belts and teaching black belts, right? There are, I mean, the example there always is, would you rather learn boxing from Mike Tyson or Angelo Dundee?
Yeah.
I would suggest to you that if you were to learn boxing from Mike Tyson in his prime, that'd be a very short lesson. You probably wouldn't learn that much other than, wow, medical bills are expensive. Angelo Dundee could probably teach you more about boxing, but I don't think he had a very good record. What's John Danaher's record? It's not very good.
Well, that's kind of like, who else was it? Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that. Freddie Roach, for instance. With like right now, Freddie Roach, Parkinson's, like starting to get a little worse as time goes on. But, that dude can coach you how to be a champion. Sure. Doesn't mean that he, is the greatest boxer that ever was, but at the same time, he just understands the system in his head. His body just couldn't physically perform the things that he knew were correct.
Sure.
The guys are incredible.
There are seasons too, right? I mean, a lot of people make the transition from being a pretty good competitor in their youth to being a pretty good instructor in their dotage, right? And the things that make you a great competitor don't necessarily make you a great instructor, and they for sure don't make you a good school owner. Right? I'm really good at riding a bicycle, therefore I should be able to cook fondue well, right? It's two totally separate things. One has nothing to do with the other. I mean, it's great that you're a great bike rider. Maybe you can take some of that dedication and learning, or dedication to learning and dedication to training, and apply it in other areas. So really the transferable skills are your ability to, when it comes to martial arts, the transferable skills are your ability to suffer, and your ability to endure, and your ability to pay close attention to technical details. I hate golf. Golf is not a sport. Golf is a game. If I start golfing, I know you live in Florida, and I apologize. Lots of golf courses there, but lots of old people wanting to, go get some exercise. Golf is a stupid activity. But I will give it. I will give it this, right? There are people who are, this is a golf club. Does my finger go here or here, right? Like I had this huge epiphany in my golf game. I moved my thumb half a centimeter down the shaft thing. I think it's the handle. I moved it half an inch down the handle, and I switched my little finger from here to there. So that attention to detail, if martial artists use that attention to detail, I used to choke with all 4 fingers in, and now for whatever, I'm making this up because I wouldn't do it. Now I realize I can just do it with 2 fingers in, and it's actually better because, like paying attention to the minute details.
Kevin wanted to let you know that it's the pinky, by the way. It's the pinky.
What did I say? Well, Kevin, I love you because you do martial arts, but if you do golf, then we've got some mending of fences to do.
Really hate golf, man.
It's a whipping boy. The day that I start golf is the day that my athletic career is officially.
That's retirement, man. That's what golf is for. Beer and hitting that ball. That's it. Like whenever I play, to be honest, I hit the ball, and if I can't find it, I don't look for it. I just drop, and I hit it again. I can't find it, I drop. By that time, I'm pretty hammered, so I don't really care.
What is it? Somebody called it a good walk ruined. I think I'll just stick with a walk component.
Good walk ruined. That's great. So I got probably about 15 minutes left on here. So, I'm going to just let people know that if they have any questions for you while you're on, they're more than welcome to ask them. There's a little delay. So anybody who actually gives us a question, just understand it's going to take a second for it to pop up on our end, but then I'll toss it up on the screen. So if you guys have any questions for Stephan, just, let us know, hit it up on the screen, and I'll toss it up for him. If it's inappropriate, obviously I'm not going to toss it up on the screen because you're a jackass. All right. So just letting you know. So let me just toss that up with your questions. Now, question. Sorry, I have to type and speak at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That's high level. That is ninja level.
I haven't gotten threatened by a ninja in a while, and I'm a little disappointed. They're off their
Russians. When you appeared on my podcast, we beat up on the Russians pretty good. So no Systema practitioners came after you?
You know what? It's funny because I don't think they speak English. So, maybe they did, but I couldn't read it. You know, but like with the ninja guys, the Bujinkan guys specifically, I get more death threats from Bujinkan practitioners than anybody else. So like I take the opportunity to dig at them as much as I can because like I have a feeling one day you're gonna find me dead with a blow dart out my ass. Like, oh my God, what happened? Like is it not obvious? The ninja star in the neck and the blow dart? Like you didn't know it was ninjas, man. Like but I live a very strange life because of this website, and it's the strangest old school Miyamoto Musashi type living that I've ever lived, and it's really weird. Like I walk into a studio, right, to train, and I try not to wear any Mcdojolife stuff, right? But it's gotten to the point now where sometimes one of the students will recognize me or whatever. So if I don't introduce myself as the guy who runs the page, and they find out after,
cover.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're calling us out, and they try to rip my head off, right? No matter what the art. If I go in and I let them know, like, hey, you know, I just want to train or whatever, they want to find out what I'm made of. They're like, oh, you've been training for a while, huh? Oh, well, we'll see about that. Like, Jesus, man. Like, you know, the one thing I noticed about a lot of martial arts studios is they have the leave the ego at the door sign at the door. But then if you look up, it also says this is a black belt school. It's
right.
Like, so which one is it? Are we taking pride in the fact that we bust our ass and we have a black belt, so that's an ego booster? Or are we saying leave the ego at the door? I don't know which one to follow. You're confusing me. You know, that kind of
we are a black belt school is simply code for sign up for our black belt program, give us all our money now in advance. That seems to be, in my experience, what we are a black belt school really means.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't quite get it. You know, I kind of do because like it's almost like people fall in these traps. You know, they at one time they loved the martial arts. They really wanted to work hard to become a great martial artist. And then somebody suggested one day that they open up a studio. And then they fell on their ass. Things weren't going well. So they sold their soul to some type of martial arts entity to teach them how to run a studio. And then they taught them how to basically be a piece of shit instead of being great martial artists again. You know, we got a question up here. So this is a good one from Ryan. He says, how do you find that balance of aggression and passive behavior in BJJ?
I think a lot of it is tuned to your goals. You know, if you're a competitor, right? If your goal is to go to the worlds and compete, then you got to be aggressive and you got to learn to deal with aggression because that's the environment that you're going to be working in. But if on the other hand, you're working with somebody's much lighter than you, somebody's much older than you, somebody on day one, if you go and you're aggressive to them, then you're a dick. I had surgery a few years ago. It's pretty big surgery. And I came back and my first roll on the mat was with a 5-month pregnant Asian woman who weighed 110 pounds pregnant, right? So even coming out of surgery, I'm pretty sure I could have crushed her. But that wasn't the point. Yeah, and if she'd moved suddenly, I could have torn all those stitches open. So that would have been good for neither person. So in that case, it was pretty passive, right? It was pretty friendly. In terms of, but I think I see what the question is, because sometimes you get into this mode of, oh, just go with the flow, my friend, just take it easy. And the other guy's playing a different game. And I've always found it difficult to ramp it up mid-roll. If I know you and go, oh, Jesus, Rob always goes 100%. If I know that in advance, now I can calibrate. Okay, it's on. But if you're one of these sleeper guys who starts out easy, my friend, we're just going to roll, and then gets to a good position and like, rah! That I've always found difficult. I'm getting better at it now. That I've always found difficult to modulate up the intensity because I like to stay at the same level that I'm at. And
Mm.
I think in part that's to make sure that, like, man, you got me in a sweep. Now I'm going to get mad and now I'm going to retaliate. Now it escalates, right? These things can escalate so quickly. And before you know it, you're in an all out brawl, which is good to do once in a while. If you're
Yeah.
healthy, if you're young, if you really want to develop, the martial arts, you got to be in a few wars. You do. Like, there's a whole bunch of UFC guys training now, and they don't do any more sparring. And I understand that. Like, sparring meaning kickboxing, or they don't take impact anymore. They just try and do it all with drills. That's all well and good for them to say, but they went through that period of hard sparring early in their careers. They put in hundreds, thousands of rounds earlier. It'll be really interesting to see that if somebody can come up to the level of UFC champion without ever having sparred.
At all.
I think that's maybe wrestling, because that's less
Yeah.
brain trauma. Jiu-jitsu, that's less brain trauma. I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong.
Well, I think that you need to be tested. I think it's just like any other sport, baseball, football, basketball. I think that there's drills that you do, and that's great, but there's nothing quite like actually playing the game.
But there are guys now, at elite level who only do drills, and then I'm going to be out of my depth because I don't know much about football, but they're only doing drills, and then they're only playing games, right? Mm-hmm. They're not doing any hard scrimmaging anymore. They're hitting focus pads, and then once in a while they got to fight. They're not putting in the round. They're not bringing in, hey, this boxer, simulates your next opponent's jab cross pretty well, and this other guy's got really good leg kicks and really good head kicks, and you should get some time in against him because he's a southpaw or whatever. It'll be really interesting. So in terms of balance and passive behavior, just to come back to Ryan's question, it's a learning experience. You have to realize that there's this dial within you. You can be more aggressive and less aggressive. You can be more passive and less passive. That's part one. And then part two is learn to modulate that. I've gone into tournaments all amped up, right?
Yeah.
And that was too amped for me. Maybe it's the perfect level of ampage. Maybe it's the perfect level of, talking about optimal state of arousal, which has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with, a 0 on a scale of 1 to 10 is I'm asleep. A 1 is I'm there. I'm getting a massage. I'm totally relaxed. A 10 is I'm trying to deadlift as much weight as I can. I should be in a red rage. I should, I'm trying to kill something with my bare hands. That's a level 10. For jiu-jitsu, you're probably going to spend most of your time between a 3 and a 7. And where should you be there? Well, you got to dial it up, dial it down. I've gone
I always got to base that off of my training partners,
for sure.
If as soon as most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, like your example of people who ramp it up mid-roll is a great example of something that happens quite often with a lot of people, especially guys who are fairly new, like usually like 2-3 stripe white belts are real bad about that because they just know enough to go, okay, I understand that I want to make this happen, but they don't have the technical skill yet to make it work without being aggressive. So they feel they have to overcompensate and then,
Well, aggressive also means a couple of different things. Aggressive could mean, to some people, going really hard on that heel hook. Aggressive could mean flinging yourself into someone's guard and, oops, I headbutted you. Or aggressive could mean just going harder with proper technique. So if you go higher in level, I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Black belts can be really aggressive, but they're still using technique that's intrinsically safe. And they're still watching out for their training partner's safety, more or less.
Yeah, like anytime I know that there's somebody who's in the gym or wherever I'm going, and I just know that that's a person who is just going 100% all the time with people, I just say no. Like, nah, I'm past that time in my life. I have nothing to prove to you. If you could beat me up, cool, that's great, that's fantastic, but I would like to continue to train for the next 50 years. So if I go with you right now, you may hinder that from happening. So I would rather you do you, because you're going to meet somebody who's going to crush you. And they're going to injure you or you're going to injure them. And then neither one of you are going to train again. Because the average martial artist, I don't know, I think they say that they train for roughly about a year and a half, and then they're gone. The average martial arts practitioner, year and a half, and then they never train again. Been doing this shit for 21 years. And I refuse to let some day 5 guy come in with his ego and try to smash me and hurt me and take me out of something that I love. So I just tell those people no. like, hey man, I'm sorry, but you're going really, really hard, and I just don't want to get injured.
No, I agree. And, like I said, I'm almost 50. I've got a ton of mileage, and I'm super selective about who I roll with now. In my younger days, anyone, anywhere, anytime, any surface. Right? You want to go on carpet? We'll go on carpet. You want to go on, concrete? I've rolled on concrete. I've rolled on wooden floors. It sucks. Carpet's actually the worst because I had,
The carpet burn.
oh, geez. Like I went against this 280-pound rugby player once. So I caught him in an armbar, but he was just using pure strength. So it took a while to break it. In the meantime, he was like cleaning the floor with me, and I didn't feel it at the time, but I had these giant rug burns on the back of my head that stayed. I want to say they turned into scars, and they turned into discolorations. It looked like sarcoma, and I want to say it took like a year till the marks got off my head. So yeah, I won that battle.
Yeah, I got drunk at a house party one time, and we went out. It was on the beach. It was a friend of mine's like 30th, and we went out to the beach, and they had that the coquina shells. You know what I'm talking about, like little broke up shells. So there's a spot where like the tide would bring those up to the shore, and there's sand, but then there's these coquina shells. Well, as the night progressed, we were all just doing jujitsu out there on the beach, just having a good time, right? And then somewhere in there, we like started horse playing around, and we like started grappling in the coquina shells, and that sucked. That sucked so bad. I think we rolled for maybe a minute or two, and then we were like, dude, I'm done. Like we both had like to literally peel these shells out of our skin. It sucked, dude.
Like sex on the beach. It's vastly overrated. Sand and shells gets everywhere.
Yeah, it's just no
deny any firsthand knowledge of that as well, but I've heard.
I'm going to take two more. I got two more questions. I got one more statement and then a question, but somebody said that's a big one, so it's taking us out of the frame. No question, sir, but thank you for sharing your wisdom. Kind of weird that I have known of you for some years now, thanks to YouTube. After a short case of practicing the scissor sweep in BJJ on training a partner, they sent me your video. Long story short, I don't practice it live anymore. Take care of each other on the mat. If you have not yet, make sure to check out his video. So you got a plug there from Kevin.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You may be back, right? Whenever your life gets under control enough, whenever the things that took you away disappear or get modified, or they get really, really good at joint replacement surgery. I don't know what it is that took you away. Just remember the art's there, and you can always come back to it. There's a lot of people come and go. And then coming back is hard, especially after you train for a while. Say you made it to, I don't know, blue belt, you come back, you're gonna suck. And everyone knows it as well, right? Everyone knows you function, you're gonna be a functional white belt, one stripe. You're kind of gonna be aware what the mount is. You're kind of gonna know that it's time to pass the guard now, and you won't be able to do it. So that's just a part of the sport. It's the sport, the art is sitting there waiting for you if and when you're ever ready to come back.
And I have two more questions. So one is from Joe Carr. He said, any suggestions on maintaining training with a chronic injury? That's a great question.
It is. A lot depends on the injury. A lot depends on the injury. There's ways to train, an injured wrist, an injured elbow. That's fairly easy. You're going to train and become one-hand dominant. An injured neck, that's not as easy. But a lot of it, okay, let's take the neck. A lot of people have problems with the neck. But I think a lot of this applies to any injury. Number one, try to strengthen it. Do your rehab, right? If you're talking to a physiotherapist and they say, do such and such, actually do such and such. Compliance with physio is really low, right? People, yeah, I know I should do, I've got tendinitis. I know I should be stretching my forearm flexors all the time, and I don't. I'm bad. It's because it's not hurting me in the moment. It hurts after training, and then it's too late to be stretching it. So compliance with physical therapy is low. Don't make it low, especially if it's a serious chronic injury. Above and beyond that, try to strengthen it. It's not always true, but it's true for about 80% of injuries, that if you strengthen the injured body part, especially the back, I find this works really well with the back, really well with the knee. If you strengthen it safely, gradually, progressively, then usually that body part is better. Usually that helps.
Yeah, a lot of physical therapists do that. Like after you get injured or whatever, they make you do certain exercises to try to strengthen the area. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And it becomes part of your lifestyle. If it's chronic, it's been around for a long time, you gotta keep on doing it. You gotta keep that area strong. That's especially true with the knees, especially true with the neck and the back. I remember when I had lower back issues. They're fixed now, thank God. But as long as I did hyperextensions and sort of stiff-legged deadlifts, not with a ton of weight, my back would never get too bad. But every time it got bad is when I'd stop doing the strengthening. Every time it got really bad, I'd stop doing the strengthening. As long as I'm doing the strengthening, it would get bad once in a while, but not really terrible. We're not like lying on the floor, taking 20 minutes to turn onto your side to pee in a bottle and then to turn back to pee in a bottle. It's probably too much information. So, and then the other thing is leave your ego at the door, and that's not exactly true, and nobody really does. Leave your ego at the door when it comes to your injury. If you've got a bad neck and somebody gets a cross-face you inside mount, that's it. Tap. Done. Do not go like, man, I can still do this. Yeah, because you're just adding to the toll of injury.
It's just gonna get worse.
Yeah, it's rare that bad necks get cross-faced into good necks. It never happens. If your knee is bugging you and you're in some weird entanglement, if your shoulder's bugging you and the guy's got I don't know, a lasso guard on it and it's cranking it at a weird angle, man, there's an easy escape. It's called tapping, going, man, my shoulder's bugging me. Can we
that escape works for me every time. Every time I use it, it just works. Oh, rear naked choke, got me, armbar. Hey, I'm out. Like,
well, then there's a really high level of scope. It's the really high level escape where you're just about choked out and you start coaching the guy through it. Man, that's really good. But if you just put your elbow here, that's it. Now, that's the high level escape.
I love those guys, man. Because, just to be honest, whenever they start coaching me through stuff, I always go for a different submission just to shut them up.
Yeah.
That's a great. You just reach your hand in the collar. No, not your four fingers, your thumb. There you go, armbar. You suck. Shut up. Last question here from Bobby. He says, I'm in the process of finding a jits gym. My goal is self-defense and fitness as opposed to competing. How can I tell if a school is focused on competition versus self-defense? Most of the ones I have encountered are medal chasers. That's a funny way of putting it. I just want to make sure that I can protect myself or my family member if I find myself in a threatening situation. Great question.
Okay. Despite the fact that I just released a module for my instructional app today called the Self-Defense Guard, I'm going to say that the difference between self-defense and sport is overblown. It is. If you are a good sport guy, you're not going to have any problems with self-defense. If you're a bad self-defense guy, you're going to have problems with self-defense and you're going to have problems in sport. Grappling is, and there is a caveat to this. If you're interested in self-defense, I think you should spend, 80, 90% of your time just doing jiu-jitsu, and then 10 to 20% of your time doing the other stuff, doing a little bit of boxing, doing a little bit of wrestling. If there's an MMA school near you, or if they offer MMA classes, do a little bit of that. Not a lot. Or you can do a lot if you want, but you don't have to do a lot. You just want to not be totally weirded out the first time somebody punches you in the head. It doesn't take, let's say that all you ever did was sport guard. And let's say you're really good at close guard and you're waiting for the guys to get their grips, and you see this sometimes in competition. The guy gets close guard and then crosses his hands behind his head and lies back. Clearly not a combative position. And what he's waiting for is the guy to reach forward and engage with grips so that he can then get his own grips. Let's say that's been your whole jiu-jitsu career. It wouldn't take you very much training with MMA gloves or bag gloves or boxing gloves to figure out that this is a bad idea. The universe will correct you. You will.
Your training partner will correct you real fast.
Yeah. you will very quickly figure out that that's not an appropriate. Exactly. Yeah. By the third punch, oh, this is a bad idea, and you'll never do it again. So I would actually say just train at the school that's the best fit for you, the one that you're actually going to go to, the one where you like the instructor the most, the one where you like the other people the most, the one that you feel most at home in, and then do a little bit of extra training. A lot of the self-defense schools, I self-identify that way because they teach, quote, a self-defense curriculum. And this is coming from a guy who, like I said, just released a self-defense curriculum for the closed guard. So the curriculum does help a little bit, but the way that it's trained is usually as a kata form. Okay, Rob, you're going to grab me by the throat, and I'm going to do technique 1. I'm going to arm lock you, and then I'm going to elbow you in the head. Or we're in an argument. You know, there's pictures of Helio Gracie doing this. You and I are arguing, and I decide to hit you with my elbow. So that's a technique, but unless you're training it live, unless there's some form of live training there, read sparring, read training against resistance, it's not going to work anyway. So a lot of the sort of self-defense oriented schools either don't spar, or they save sparring for some magical thing you're eventually going to do down the road. And I think both of those are terrible ideas. I mean, some schools say you got to have trained for a month or 2 before you can spar. I personally don't agree with that, but there's some really good examples of schools that have delayed sparring for a month or 2 and do really well financially and produce some great people. So I can't argue with that. But certainly if like sparring is this magical thing you're going to do 2-3 years from now, well, you're really just delaying your real learning of self-defense by 2 or 3 years. Because if you don't practice using this stuff under pressure, the odds that it's magically going to work for you, if some guy, you know, rear ends you and then runs out, and, you know, or you're walking down the street and somebody jumps out of an alley and says, "Give me your wallet," and you're a small child, and they haven't, you know, it's not going to work. You're going to be under so much stress in that moment that unless you've been putting yourself under stress on a regular basis and sparring, all your technique is going to disappear. So it's actually find the best jiu-jitsu school you can, and then do a little bit of additional training to get, you know, become comfortable with the punching and kicking. Not an expert. You don't have to become an expert. You just have to, oh, he's throwing a jab. You know, I should cover this way.
Yeah.
Throwing a hook, I can duck. You just want to learn the basics, the vocabulary, learn the basics of the clinch, learn the basics of ground and pound. It's easy to win a fight when you're on top. You don't need to hit the guy, or you can figure it out. Like if you're on top of somebody, you can pound them. That's a great time to eye gouge them if you really want to go back to the thing we were talking about earlier. But it's learning to deal with punches and strikes when you're on the bottom. That's really the differentiator. Yeah, I mean, you can use punches and strikes to pass the guard, but it's not as necessary, right? If you're in a street fight, you take the guy down and you're on top of him in the guard, like, you've won. You know, you're gonna survive probably, unless the guy sweeps and gets to the top or pulls out a knife. So I would also say, yeah, and I've done wrestling with knives, right? Not live knives, but training knives. That's a really valuable experience. I don't think enough jiu-jitsu guys do that. And again, you don't need to do it every day. I know Burton Richardson does it. He's the only guy I can think of who does it.
Often.
Sorry?
Often. He does it often.
I don't know how often. I should ask him.
Yeah, like, you know, that's a fun experience, like the training with the knives and the training with the guns and stuff like that. Like the what if scenario kind of things is important. It keeps your, like in Israeli arts.
Do it once a year. Do it once a year. Like, we'll start in the guard and you've got a knife hidden in your jacket, and go. Next time it'll be in my jacket. Go. And you do it once a year, and you'll learn the lessons pretty quickly. And you know, so get good jiu-jitsu and then add little bits of other stuff into it would be my answer.
Now, we're kind of out of time. We've been going at it for an hour, dude. Time flies, man. But I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you letting me on your show. Thank you for coming on mine. I hope we can do it again sometime in the future. You know, I love talking shop.
Oh, yes.
But with with your stuff, you just talked about your module. So I just want you to take a minute and just kind of like let people know how they can see you, where they can find your stuff. Just kind of plug yourself a little bit.
Okay. I'm finally getting over my shyness at plugging myself, so I will do that. You were on my podcast, which is called the Strenuous Life Podcast. I do a ton of conversations and topics around martial arts, but also other things. I mean, I've had champion kiteboarders on there. We had Les Stroud, Survivor Man. We've had Navy SEAL snipers on there. It's pretty cool. I'm really enjoying it. The focus is martial arts, but that's the Strenuous Life Podcast. You can get that on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you like. I've obviously got the YouTube channel, which is where most people know my ugly face from. So that's, if you search for Stephan Kesting on YouTube, you can get both to the jiu-jitsu oriented channel and to the self-defense oriented channel. And I think you'll like the next video I'm releasing on it. I'm bringing back the mini mall karate professor.
I am looking forward to that, actually. I saw you post up the picture or the little video today, like the little teaser of it. So I'm looking forward to
that. Where else? I've got a couple of apps on the App Store and on the Google Play Store. So there's the Roadmap for BJJ app, which is kind of a progression through, it's a view from 30,000 feet for jiu-jitsu. There's a whole bunch of free stuff on there. And if you like the free stuff, you can get the paid stuff. But even the free stuff will give you the big picture of jiu-jitsu. I've got the BJJ, the Grapple Arts BJJ Master app, which is the repository for sort of all of my other instructionals, including that closed guard one. Again, there's a ton of free material. I work a lot with Rob Bernacki. We just released an entire module on controlling the back when you're on the weak side, meaning if I'm on your back, if I'm lucky enough to get on your back, I've got my overhook, typically my underhook. In the old days, you always wanted to go to the overhook side, but now a whole bunch of attacks have been developed on the underhook side, the weak side, the quote, weak side. So that entire module is there for free. If you go and you download the Grapple Arts BJJ Master app, go look inside the BJJ formula area, and then you'll see that you already have an entire module there. And then there's a whole bunch of other free stuff there. That's probably a pretty good way to start. I do have a book out there called A Roadmap for BJJ. If you do search for Roadmap for BJJ book, that is, again, the view from 30,000 feet, the positions of jiu-jitsu with your sort of a general picture of what your options are. It's way too diverse in art to say, here are the 1,856 things you can do from side mount when your arms are both on the same side.
But yeah, dude, thank you so much for hopping in. Anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to look at your stuff, I really suggest it. You had great observation a couple of years back about like a magazine that we had talked about in your podcast, about a magazine article that you had seen with the most unrealistic martial arts that you had seen. It's a great video on YouTube. But if you just look him up, Stephan Kesting on YouTube, you can pretty much go down that rabbit hole for a long time. I know I do sometimes. So I want to say I appreciate your insight, and I appreciate you hopping on the show. And I hope to see you again soon, man.
Good luck with stuff.
All right. Catch you guys later. Y'all have a great day.